Believe in Bigfoot? Dogman? Any cryptid? Are you skeptical?
Curious about the supernatural, conspiracy theories, the unknown? Then come join us as we explore facts, tall tales, and encounters on Creatures and Curiosities.
Hello and welcome to Creatures and Curiosities. I'm David.
And I'm Jake.
And this week we are going to be talking about the Porterville Gnome. So if you are listening in your car or at the gym or on the couch or nestled into a warm blanket and getting ready for a bedtime story, we hope you sit back and enjoy.
I don't know if this is the one you want to listen to when you're going to bed, though.
Yeah, this one is a little bit terrifying. And you know, when I was doing some research on this, I couldn't help but think about my daughter, who you affectionately know as your wife. She has always been terrified of little people, right? And so when she was a little girl growing up, she would watch like The Wizard of Oz. And everybody's afraid of the flying monkeys and the witch. But not her.
No.
She was terrified of the Munchkins. And so, and then the same thing with the Willy Wonka.
And the Oompa Loompas.
Yeah, the Oompa Loompas.
She can't watch it because of that.
Horrified, yeah. And so I thought, boy, if this was her and this happened to her.
Oh, she'd be out of there the day of.
The day of. Yeah. It would have been more terrifying than this woman had, I'm sure. But anyway, so I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on a lot of the listeners. I know everybody knows what gnomes and pixies and other little
magical creatures
are, but I thought maybe we could get into maybe the history of what a gnome actually was in the beginning. And back in the 1500s, 16th century, there was a physician and an alchemist, which is like a modern day chemist, I guess you could say. And his name goes by Paracelsus. But his real name was Theophrastus von Hohenheim, and he was actually Swiss, and well known for his work in alchemy, where he was into the salts of the earth and chemicals that they found natural, like minerals and things of that nature. And he is actually the one that coined the term gnome, and it was basically a mythological creature or a diminutive spirit during Renaissance magic and alchemy. And it took off from there and kind of got into a lot of folklore, especially in the European areas. And as these little gnomes were initially little humanoids that were living underground, but over time, through different books, and then of course much later in years, when movies started hitting the scene, these little gnomes were living in forests and woodlands and all over the place. And
the story about them doesn't change much besides that from the beginning. It's not like new things are getting made up about them. The story keeps evolving. It's been pretty much the same since he coined that phrase and before then.
Exactly. And, you know, they're just these little mystical creatures. They've been described over time as either being benevolent or malevolent creatures. They can either be helpful or evil.
And that's pretty scary to think of, that they could be evil, because in the research, we found that they're said to have 7 times the strength of a grown man, which is crazy to think of. Something 2 foot tall can just pick you up and chuck you across the lawn if it wanted to.
Yeah.
If it was a malevolent one.
Yeah, frightening.
On top of that, they are very fast. They get up to speeds of 35 miles an hour, which is what equivalent to like a grizzly bear. I would say they get up to about 30 something miles an hour, don't they? Top speed.
Exactly.
And also they have better eyesight than a hawk. They love animals. They help animals, especially wounded and dying ones. They are said to have stayed on farmhouses or around farms, especially ones where the owners were kind of poor and couldn't afford like vet bills and stuff like that. these gnomes would kind of help out the animals and take care of them. They loved all animals except for cats.
Yeah.
For some reason, they hate cats.
Isn't that funny that they hate cats, and of course they hate trolls.
And they hate trolls too. Yep.
Trolls being their natural enemy, I guess you could say. But yeah, so that's a basic rundown on what a gnome is. And of course, they're tiny little guys. And
there's a lot more info. We're not going into what they eat. They have different names in different cultures and societies throughout the world, but all cultures have them.
Right. Yes, especially when you get into the American Indian folklore.
Yeah.
Almost every tribe across the U.S. has some form of a community of little people that, again, fits this mold that sometimes they're very evil and sometimes they're very helpful. And we can kind of get into that a little bit later in the program. But so what we're going to be talking about today is this one particular little gnome who was literally just a little terror.
Yeah.
He was a little jerk, I guess you could say, and terrorized a couple of families. But we're going to give credit to an author and blogger by the name of Jason Offutt. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. But he is the one that initially broke the story. And when we get into this story, the other caveat here is that there was a lot of discrepancy between what Jason reported, what the news media's reported, and what a television program that covered this incident, they all reported. And you get different dates, different last names. There were just a lot of detail and fact that seemed to kind of get mixed up in the works.
Yeah. Story the same, but all those little details.
Exactly. The story is identical, but the names are a little bit different, and some of the, like whether it's a grandson or a son, and just little things. So if we can just put that out there, that the story that we're relating today is based on an accumulation of both news media and the original blogger. So this occurred in the city of Porterville. Porterville is a pretty small town located off of Highway 65 in the San Joaquin Valley of California. And it's often referred to as the gateway of the Sequoia National Forest.
Yeah, it sits right between Fresno and Bakersfield down there.
Exactly, just south of Visalia and right in between the two big cities. And it's sits nestled into the kind of the foothills of the Sierra Mountains. And they have a population of about 53,000. There's a river that runs through that area called the Tule River. And this story takes place quite near that, in fact. And so kind of getting into maybe just a little bit of history about this lady. It was in 2009. And her name was Tammy Thomas, according to the show, and Tammy with an unknown last name, according to the blog. So it's really hard to say which one it is. But she was kind of down on her luck. And one thing says she was single parent. The other says she was widowed, which still makes her a single parent. But, so I'm not really sure of where the husband was in this mix, other than he wasn't there. And she was living with two of her daughters and a grandson or son. Again, that's one of the discrepancies. We're not sure. It does go by a different last name than her, so I'm assuming it might be a grandson.
He's about 9 at the time of the incident, or so the show says.
Yeah, so 9 years old, something like that. And the bottom line is her home that she was living in had actually burned down. And she was living with her parents, with her kids and her grandson. So she finds this home in Porterville, or it could be on the outskirts of Porterville. I wasn't sure if it was in the county or the city limits of Porterville. But It's near the Tule River, runs to the backside of the property. And basically, it was a small farmhouse.
Yeah, and it's got about 5 or so barns, outbuildings, sheds sitting on the property as well.
Exactly. And they're kind of just scattered across the property because I believe it's about 100-acre property.
So a good chunk of land.
Good chunk of land. And she was very fortunate to find that. And so she was thinking, boy, this is going to be great. She got to move out of her parents' home. She's out on a bunch of property where her kids can run around and play. And she actually had several animals, dogs, cats, chickens.
Ducks as well, I think.
Ducks, yeah. And so she thought, this is just a perfect place for me, my kids, my animals to live. So she moves into this place and kind of immediately notices that one of the old buildings, which is either a small barn or a shed, it's kind of creepy to her. She doesn't like it.
Yeah, she gets the hair on the neck type feeling every time she's out by it.
It's the heebie-jeebies.
She also notices that some of the wildlife and her animals are a little sketched out by it too. They're always staring at it or
exactly
kind of staying away from it.
And kind of like I said in the Bigfoot episode, where my neighbor said, felt like something was watching me.
Exactly.
She has the same exact statement that when she moved in, every time she was outside, she felt like something was watching her from that barn. But she actually never saw anything. So she didn't think too much of it, But then all of a sudden she notices that some of her ducks and her chickens and other things are starting to disappear.
And now she's starting to hear different noises on the property.
She's hearing things that she can't figure out what it is.
Sometimes it sounds like someone's running around out there, different noises, stuff getting knocked over. But
singing, laughing, just weird noises, which, like I said, she cannot figure out what it is, but she starts getting to the point where she feels maybe a little unsafe at night. And so
to the point she quit letting the kids go out at night by themselves.
Right. Yeah. She tells them, you're not going out there and playing because I don't know what's out there, which, that in and of itself, just the unknown is pretty terrifying, right? You're on a new piece of property. You feel like something is glaring at you, but you don't know what it is. The animals are freaked out all the time. They don't want to go near that little outbuilding. And apparently she never goes to investigate it either.
No.
I think
she's probably too scared.
She's
rightfully so, just freaked out by it.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely would have probably gone out there.
Yeah. Just give it a little glance. What the heck are these things looking at?
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't really say how long she'd lived there, but I'm assuming not very long. When she and her grandson, his name is Gavin Cochran, and I think I actually located him, but I chose not to reach out and try and contact him because you don't know if, this is something he's gotten over.
Or if he's been tortured by hundreds of people already. Like,
exactly.
Hey, man, let me hear that story again.
Yeah, but he still lives in the Porterville area, according to social media and whatnot. I chose not to reach out because maybe reopen a wound or something that causes him some grief and maybe he has to go back into therapy or something. So I thought, no, we'll leave that alone. Yeah. It'd be great for the show, but maybe not so great for him.
We'll let him live in peace, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So she and her grandson, they come home from shopping. They get out of the car and she notices peripherally kind of some movement out to the right side. But she doesn't look over there, right? She's more concerned about picking up her groceries and getting into the house. And then she kind of hears this little evil chuckle.
Yeah.
And I can picture that already, kind of these stupid little gnomes, they're, I don't know. I think that would give me the creeps.
Oh, absolutely.
Way worse than Bigfoot.
Especially if you're thinking it's probably, if it's not fully dark yet, it's pretty close to it. So it's harder to see things.
Yeah.
And she's already creeped out.
And
she sees her grandson. She looks over at him as she's picking up the groceries and notices that he's like frozen, dead in the steps.
Into the distance, Yeah. So she asks him point blank, what are you looking at, And so she turns to, look in the direction that he's frozen and staring at when she sees this little creepy little humanoid about 25 to 30 feet away from her, which I can't even imagine what she was thinking at the time.
Yeah, that's
to me, that's more terrifying than seeing a grizzly. It's just some little frightening creature because of the way she describes him as well.
exactly.
So he's like 2 to 3 feet tall. He's wearing these black baggy pants and a gold shirt. And he's got a long beard and a red pointed hat, which, I mean, that's a gnome,
That's
right?
a gnome.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, she's got a gnome on her property.
Not to mention, it starts smiling at her,
Yes,
but it's not a nice, pretty smile.
it's a creepy, frightening grin from ear to ear. And she says that the teeth were discolored and jagged and sharp, which always reminds me of that movie way back. It was way before your time. But it was terrifying to me, called The Trilogy of Terror.
I don't know if I ever saw that.
I don't know if you ever saw that, but there was this little doll that came from someplace, it was like a little African doll or something, and it had a little mask with it and a spear, and it came to life and it tortured this woman. Karen Black or something was the actress that was in it, but bottom line is it ends up killing her in the end, and she's sitting in her living room stabbing the floor with a butcher knife, and when she smiles, it's a ear-to-ear grin with these jagged teeth, so I picture that because I was horrified by that growing up. And I can only imagine what this woman was thinking when she sees this little gnome, on her property, but it wasn't a happy, nice little gnome,
No.
and when he's showing those jagged teeth, she was terrified.
Oh, yeah.
And the kid can't even speak, he's just frozen in place.
Yeah, so she ditches the groceries, snatches him up,
Chucks him.
beelines it for the house.
Yeah, which I think anybody would do, right?
Yeah.
Leave the groceries on the ground and run in. But she gets into the house, and her 2 girls are in the house, and she tells them what had happened, and then they can hear this little thing running around the house. I kind of picture, I don't know, because I have seen the home, but in all the research I've done, absolutely no mention of the address of the house, even what road it's on. I kind of looked at like Google Earth,
Right.
and was looking at roadside views to see if I could recognize the home. But there's just too many of them, along the river. And you don't know how far outside of Porterville it was either, you know.
Or how deep the house is off the road. It could be totally out of sight from Google Maps.
Right.
So,
but I kind of envision, based on her description, that it has like the wooden porch or something.
old school,
Yeah,
right?
old school. And she can hear it running on that, wooden porch, running all the way around the house, tapping, and banging on the walls,
Laughing.
and laughing and giggling. And I don't know, it's just, it's pretty frightening. If that was to happen to me, I mean, I'd go out and smoke that little
Oh, yeah,
thing.
you got to shoot that thing right in the face.
But she obviously doesn't have any weapons, and she's in fear for her children's safety. And this thing is, running around and peeking in windows. And so she can hear it laughing at her outside. And so when she's looking out on one of the kitchen windows, and she can see just the top of the little pointed hat. So he couldn't quite see in the window, but she knows it's still out there.
And he knows he's torturing him.
And he's having a great time doing it, But anyway, eventually this thing leaves the house. It doesn't really say, she didn't say how long it was that they felt that they were trapped in there by this thing running around. But it does say that eventually the little guy went either back out to the barn or wherever he goes. So she goes back outside to retrieve her groceries. And so that night, she doesn't get a whole lot of sleep by any means because she's still worried for her children. Right. But 2 nights later, the little guy comes back. Yeah, so he gave her one night of reprieve, and then he decides he's coming back.
Make her feel relaxed and then get her.
Exactly. So she and her grandson are sitting on the couch, and they're watching TV when they hear on the back porch, they've got potted plants back there, and she can hear them smashing and falling off the rails, and obviously something's happening in the back, right?
Yeah. And then after that, she can hear jiggling at the door like someone's trying to get it open.
Exactly. Yeah, which that's pretty terrifying as well. You know, that she knows
whether
now,
gnome or not.
Yeah, she doesn't even know what it is yet, but she can hear that someone's trying to get in. So she runs and she looks out the window, and what does she see?
That little gnome.
Exactly, that little gnome. And so the gnome saw that they were looking at him, and so he decides, it's time to book. So he takes off and runs back out to his barn or wherever he goes. And then the following day, because she was too afraid to go out that night, but the following day she goes out and sees that the back patio area had been virtually destroyed. All of her plants, all of her pots smashed.
Just being mischievous, breaking stuff.
Just
to be a turd.
Being a little vandal. And her garden's all torn apart, and she just doesn't even know what to do, And this, in the show, when I rewatched the show just so I could be up on all this, they don't really touch on how long, but this goes on for months. So according to like the blogging and according to Tammy, this was not like an isolated incident or one and two things. This goes on and on and on to the point where she is so disturbed and the children are so disturbed.
Well, you got to think just the fear alone and the lack of sleep on top of it, because it's happening probably 3 to 4 times a week.
Yes. Yeah. Running around, banging on windows, laughing and giggling, and just literally torturing this family. So she decides that they've got to leave. She's got to give up her dream home, which, they were just renting the place. She didn't buy it. But she decides it's time to leave, but she doesn't have enough money to leave.
So she's stuck.
They're stuck. So she's saving up money, but from what I understand, this takes several months for her to be able to collect enough money to be able to move out.
And during all that time, it's wreaking havoc. She can see it out in the barn. She could hear it out in the barn laughing at him. He'll scare them, run back, and just laugh maniacally, I guess.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what this woman went through. And she says that it was so often and it was so disturbing in terms of like just not ending, it just kept going on, that she thinks that there may have been more than one gnome, that it could have been maybe 2 or 3 that were actually keeping this, horrible behavior going. But she only saw the one.
Yep.
So her thought is 2 or more, but she can only verify that she saw one. So I guess they asked her, did you ever report this incident? And of course
she didn't.
Just like I said in the Bigfoot episode, most people don't report stuff for the fear that they're going to be chalked up as a lunatic.
Yeah.
Right. So she decides, nope, I'm just getting my kids and getting the heck off of this property.
Well, you got to think she reports it to the cops, and then next thing you know, CPS, Child Protective Services, is knocking on her door to take her kids away because they think she's a nut job.
Yeah, and that's reality too.
Yeah.
It can happen. You get the authorities out there, and there's no evidence. Especially, I guess the one thing you got to think of is if this is a little mystical creature, does it leave footprints? Does it leave evidence behind? Is it able to just appear and vanish?
Or does it just look like some wildlife knocked over the plants in the garden when they were trying to get some tomatoes or something?
Yeah,
who knows?
Exactly. And so next thing you know, you got Child Protective Services out, interviewing the kids. And I don't know. It's just a bad situation. But she was able to escape it and ended up moving away. I don't know if she stayed in Porterville. I mean, if I was her,
I'd be out of the city.
I'd have moved to Kentucky or something. Exactly. I'd be so far away from Porterville and the Tule River that,
Well, you got to imagine too, because if it were you or I, we go out there, you try to blast that thing, and then it just laughs at you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or it disappears or something because they're magical creatures.
Even more horrifying.
Yeah.
That if something that you can't kill, and it's kind of like, again, like last week when we were talking about hunting the dog man. And the fact is, what if it is demonic?
Yeah.
And what if this little thing is demonic?
Yeah.
Right?
The maniacal evil ones could be little demons.
Yeah.
Sent to pick at you.
You never know. But, so this poor woman, she doesn't report to anybody. She doesn't want to be known as the crazy lady from Porterville. So she moves on with her kids, and hopefully that's the end of the story. But alas, it's not.
It is not.
It's not. And this is where, in my opinion, which, that and $5 will buy you a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the second family validates what she says, and it's what makes it real to me.
Agreed.
Because, and we'll get into it, but it's just...
If it was a solo incident, you could chalk it up as a nut job.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So that woman moved out, Lord knows, 2009 or early 2010. But another couple who obviously thinks that they found their dream home, in March of 2010. So that could be just a couple of months. It could be a couple of weeks. I don't know exactly when Tammy moved
nothing
out.
specifies the dates exactly on that.
But this woman who's named Charlie, and no last name, or depending upon, which account you listen to, she could be Charlie Thomas. And I think the Thomas thing got mixed up between Tammy and Charlie, and nobody really knows which one is which.
Right.
But for our podcast, it's just going to be Charlie.
Yep. Make it easy.
Yeah. So Charlie and her husband, who remains unnamed.
Probably by choice.
It's by choice.
He doesn't want to be the nut.
Which is exactly like my wife, right?
Yeah.
Keep me out of the podcast.
Yeah. Don't let those people know I saw that 8-foot-tall serial killer.
Exactly. But anyway, so yeah, he's unnamed, but Charlie and her husband move into what later is determined to be the same small farmhouse on the Tule River in Porterville. And they used some of the little outbuildings on the property to store some of their belongings. But just as Tammy did, they get this eerie feeling about the old barn that sits out there, and they stayed away from it as much as they could.
Which
you know what? I can't imagine that, because if I move into a new property, I want to see all the buildings.
Yeah.
I'd be going through everything and seeing what's out there.
You got to know them inside and out. I'd be walking that 100-acre property, looking at everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they don't like that one little building, so they just avoid it like the plague.
That presence has to be overwhelming.
Yeah. And, I always picture, in horror movies when you walk into the old barn and it's got the swinging sickles and all the meat hooks hanging from the ceiling.
The weird shadows that look like stuff. Yeah.
God knows, what was in that barn, but nobody can describe it because nobody went there. And that there has to be something to that as well.
Absolutely.
When everybody just gets this feeling like, I'm not going in that barn.
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of an evil presence there. Right?
There's so many details in this story, like you said, that help solidify Tammy's story.
Yes.
Just the presence alone.
Just that in and of itself. Yeah.
Means something.
Means something. Yeah. I mean, most people, you're not afraid to go look at stuff.
Yeah.
Unless that feeling is, just overwhelming.
Well, she got a 2-foot-tall maniacal gnome living in there.
Yeah, exactly. Or an 8-foot serial killer. Yeah. Barefoot. But so Charlie's husband, he's kind of into the gardens that are around this property. And so he decorates the property with little fairies and gnomes and toadstools and things that, he's little trinkets and stuff to just kind of decorate.
Make it look nice. Yeah. Homey. They even stock the pond that they have on the property with a bunch of koi fish.
Yeah, exactly. And those aren't cheap, by the way, So, they throw all these fish in there, and he's feeling pretty snappy about all this, right? And so both of them pretty much felt like, hey, this is our home now.
Well, I mean, 100 acres next to the river, farmhouse, that's the dream.
You got to love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't blame him for thinking that.
Yeah. So if you ever find a 100-acre property near a river that's got a barn on it, just bulldoze the barn. Don't even worry about it. So anyway, this couple, they're all settled into their new home. And then one night, it's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning, something like that. And they hear this gurgling and singing coming from outside. And the way they described it wasn't melancholy. It wasn't a beautiful song. It was something very evil.
Sinister, yeah.
It's very sinister. The gurgling and just the noises that were coming from this and I always picture, those in horror movies when the little children are singing and doing the chanting. La, la, la. Exactly.
While they're ripping people's eyes out.
And I thought, oh my God, that in and of itself would be horrifying.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You hear a lot.
I'd be grabbing a firearm right away.
Absolutely.
First thing. Because let's say you're not expecting what's coming up.
Yeah.
It could be a mountain lion ripping apart the family dog. It could be who knows what.
Yeah, who knows? Especially when they describe it as gurgling noises.
Exactly, because I think
kind of like blood coming up the throat or something.
Yeah, I would think of some animal getting eaten by a predator.
Yeah, exactly. So, but instead of, being terrified, he does kind of what I would do. He looks out his bedroom window. Yep. And both of them are now peering out into the yard, and they're both in shock because standing next to the pond is this little 2 to 3 foot tall creature, right? There's that stinky little gnome out there. And they describe him as wearing, so he changed his clothes from when Tammy was there because now he's wearing maroon pants, a yellow shirt, brown vest, and a dark waistcoat, but he's still got his little reddish pointed hat.
Which it either could be change of clothes or it could solidify what she thought, that there was more than one of them out there and this one's just dressed differently.
I didn't even think of that.
It could go either way.
It's a good point.
But he's not just standing there.
No, he's not. He's and this little guy. It makes you sick to think about what he's doing because he loves to torture people.
Yeah,
that's
exactly
really all it boils down to. So he's standing out in the garden, right? And she's standing over. Well, actually, when he sees them looking at him, the first thing he does is he grins at them, and they say the same thing. That he's got these little dark, beady eyes and jagged,
nasty teeth,
like they haven't been brushed in 35 years, And he says that basically it was like something out of a grim fairy tale. And so the little guy is standing next to the pond that Charlie's husband so loved and put all these little trinkets around, and he's got his lily pads, and you can just picture all the work that he put into this thing. And this little jerk is standing there, reaches into the water, pulls a koi fish out, and bites into it and kills the fish, and he's eating it, And so Charlie's husband opens the bedroom window, ticked. Right. He's eating his koi.
Yeah. And like you said, those things aren't cheap.
They aren't cheap. I mean, I would think instead of worrying about the fish, he'd be worrying about the gnome that's in your yard. But he's so angered by this thing eating his fish that he opens the window and he yells at this gnome and says, hey, get off my property. And so what does the gnome do? The gnome laughs at him and flips him off.
Gives him the bird.
Gives him the bird. And it's kind of like, oh, my Lord, that dirty little gnome.
It doesn't get more mischievous than that.
No, because, at this point, he's there literally just to torture this
Just
family.
To be a jerk. Just to eat their fish and flip them off.
Yeah, absolutely insane. So Charlie's husband he's just not going to allow this.
Right.
He doesn't want to go out there. Because obviously I think he thinks that this thing is evil, but he calls the police. Now, I was very close. I really wanted to call the Porterville Police Department and or the Tulare County Sheriff's Department because I'm sure one of the two would probably have responded. this was so long ago. I'm sure that their records division, this is something that, would have been in a basement somewhere, and they probably would have to go find it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to call to confirm. And then I was afraid they'd think I was a nut. Like I said, hey, can you go look up this report of the Gnome? And then I started thinking, well, they might also, if somebody's been around long enough, the records clerk that works in there might actually go, hey, I remember that incident.
Exactly.
So maybe that's something I need to do and verify down the road.
But we're going to have the dates hammered down, figure that out, because they didn't even tell the police what they thought it was out there.
That's
They
correct.
just told them that they thought they had some kind of trespasser on their property.
Exactly. They were afraid of being.
So you probably would look like a
Labeled
nut
as
if you called asking for the Gnome.
Yeah. And then not knowing, which agency was responding to that
Exactly.
jurisdiction and where that house is really located. Because a lot of times it's kind of like the Finding Bigfoot thing that came to Bozeman. That's what they said. And it wasn't in Bozeman.
Meanwhile, they're 60 miles away in a different city. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to avoid calling. It's not that crucial to confirm this anyway, because like you said, Charlie says, I didn't want to tell him that it was a gnome. So I just told him we had a trespasser on the property. Oddly enough, though, when the police get out there and they contact both Charlie and her husband, they told them that they couldn't find anything, that they had walked around and searched the property for a trespasser, but the only thing that they could find were small childlike footprints around the pond.
Which, that's why I want to see if that report's there.
Yeah.
Because that would solidify the story even more. Because to me, it's already solidified with these matching so much. Two families who don't know each other.
Right.
Within that same time span, having the same kind of incidences happen.
I think that this is going to have to spark a trip to Porterville.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're going to have to go there. And we're going to have to go to both agencies and see if they have a report. Maybe drive around and look for that farmhouse.
Yeah.
Now, the shed's not there, and we'll touch on that in a second. But I think I would still, if the show that aired is accurate, they showed the front of this farmhouse. And I remember, of course, what it looks like.
Right.
But maybe we need to go there and see,
I think so.
And the show that I keep talking about, that show aired, it was Monsters and Mysteries in America. If anybody's interested in watching this episode.
It's a good episode.
It's a good one. It's kind of creepy, near and dear to my heart. I just think that this one is more valid than almost every other cryptid thing that I've ever watched, because there's almost never any evidence. So if the police found footprints in these two families within the same time frame, had the same experience, yeah, I mean,
it's got to be.
It's got to be real.
Yeah.
Unless it's, I mean, if they're pulling a hoax and they actually know each other and they both came up with this, then, they pulled off a great one.
Yeah.
Because all the people that were involved with it, news media, this episode of Monsters and Mysteries in America, by the way, it's season 2, episode 5. It aired back in January of 2014. They took the information from this Jason Offit and ran with it. And then when they interviewed Tammy, they did show her name as Tammy Thomas, which is why I went with that, because she was actually there on the show being interviewed, and they ran her name underneath it. And I would think, some editor would be, well, that wasn't her last name. And
Let's go ahead and
they should have corrected it.
Edited that, yeah.
So that's why we went with that. But going back to the Charlie and her husband.
Yeah, because that wasn't the only incident they had.
That wasn't the only incident. So night after night after night, this little gnome could be seen out at the pond. And he was either holding their ornaments, he'd pick up little gnomes and
Little fairies from around the garden.
and stuff from around the garden. He'd hold that in one hand and a koi fish in the other, slowly killing off the koi fish. And he's eating them in front of this guy. And he knows that this guy's just losing it, right? So Charlie and her husband, they decide they're going to try and stifle, what's going on. They're too afraid to go in the barn. I'd have burned the barn down.
Oh,
personally.
yeah. If you're thinking it's coming from there.
Yeah, of course, they're renting the property, and I guess they were afraid, they'd have to pay for any
I'll pay for it.
damage. I'd pay for
Yeah,
it, too.
exactly.
Yeah, just so I could live in peace, rebuild the barn or whatever. But, yeah, they decide that they're going to go out and remove all of the decorations. They're going to take all the koi fish out of the pond, and they're going to put these fish inside a tank in the house. Well, so they do that. I don't know how long it takes them, probably a day or two.
Yeah, if that.
Round everything up, get them out of there. And so the gnome is
Furious. He is furious.
He walks out, looks in the pond, and he is just beside himself that they took away a food source, which flies in the face of what gnomes do, right?
Right.
So this guy is obviously one of the evil ones. But as we studied, the original gnome was friends with all animals and took care of them.
And they didn't eat any meat.
No,
they only ate plants and berries and all that stuff.
Exactly. And so this little guy's so furious that at 3 a.m, they hear him out there screaming and yelling and cussing and just throwing a fit.
And some of what they say, it sounded like gibberish, like he was speaking an unknown language at times.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they were terrified, though, because they had no idea what this little enraged Cretan was going to do.
Well, the thing was already a little demon, and now he's furious.
And
So,
now, exactly. And so they run around and they secure all the doors and the windows. And then I guess the husband is like, oh, my Lord, the doggy door. He could get in through the doggy door. So they run to the doggy door and they try and secure that. And now this little guy is running and around the house. And I can just hear the little pitter patter of those nasty little feet slapping onto the
As he's
the
screaming.
wood, as he's screaming and yelling. And so the husband looks out the window and all they can see is the top of that pointed little hat flying by the windows.
Which again is just another little description that matches what Tammy said in the first story.
Exactly. He wasn't tall enough to peek in the window, so all they could see was the top of that pointed hat.
Hear him laughing and screaming.
Oh, absolutely. This family was literally terrorized by this little creature. And just as Tammy was, they decided that the only thing that they could do was to move. So they gave up their dream home as well.
100 acres and a river.
100 acres, a river, you got your nice farmhouse, you got your animals, all their little decorations in their garden, and they were living the life, and this little guy destroyed it for them.
Yep.
So one thing that was not in the show, they didn't really get into Charlie and her husband very much. They did touch on the fact that they got together later, which we'll talk about in a second. But one of the things that I read that Charlie's husband said happened, which I don't know why the show wouldn't run this unless they were worried about, giving kids nightmares or something.
Yeah, it being too gory or horrifying.
Yeah, but to me, this is the most chilling of all the things that happened.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't long after they had moved in, before the little gnome even made its first appearance, because they didn't know what they were dealing with. Charlie's husband goes out because he hears noises coming from the barn. And he has no idea what it is, but it's like screaming. Not like my Bigfoot screams, but like something was being injured, so it was like a painful type scream. And he decides he's going to go investigate because, again, there was no gnome up to that point. So there was actually nothing for him to be afraid of yet.
Yeah. I would have done the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think anybody would, or at least call the cops. Do something. You'd have to take some action if you heard something screaming from your barn. So he goes out there and he swings the door open and he sees what would have just been a horrifying sight. But he sees, and I don't believe it was his cat, but there is a cat hung up and skinned alive. And it's swinging over in the corner, screaming and bawling, and it hadn't been gutted out or anything. It was just skinned. And so this poor cat is still alive and hung in the barn. And that's horrifying.
Oh,
I don't care how
absolutely.
you slice it. That's horrifying.
I don't even like cats, and that's
no,
horrifying.
yeah,
I still wouldn't want
same.
that to happen to a cat.
Not at all. So it freaks him out. So he runs out of there. I probably should have just killed the cat, but I guess the cat died on its own. And then when he went back out, the cat's gone. Like the next day, the cat's gone. So assumably it was eaten or buried or something by the gnome. But during our research, when you mentioned that earlier, that gnomes hate cats
For whatever reason.
That's their like nemesis. They hate trolls and they hate cats. All I could think of was, why didn't they run that in the original story?
It fits so good with the history of gnomes.
It does. And it kind of validates that it was a gnome.
Yeah.
They hate cats. He found one. He skinned it alive. And it goes to show how evil he is too, that, a normal gnome would be taking care of wildlife and helping farmers and nurturing things, but
Not skinning and hanging
not
cats.
this poor cat.
Flipping you off from the koi pond.
He took all 9 lives from that thing right now,
Gosh.
But anyway, yeah, so going back to the Monsters and Mysteries in America, they touch on this, but I did read Jason Offutt's blog as well, and I think his blog had a little more descriptive information on it.
Yeah, a lot in there. It was good.
He sees that he remembered. So Charlie came to him through the internet and told him about what was happening, because he does write like mysteries of the unknown kind of stuff.
Right.
And he's an author who talks about a lot of different things. His blog is all over the page, as far as it's not just on cryptids. He does a lot of other things, but they also knew that he did touch on that kind of stuff. So Charlie writes to him and she tells him what happened. And he's like, wow, I seem to remember another story exactly the same. And so he asks her, what was the address of this farmhouse that you lived in? So she gives him the address and it's the same. So he's like, well, I hate to tell you this, but the family that lived there before you reported the exact same thing. And this Tammy Thomas, she reported it not like to the authorities, but she did the same that Charlie did. I don't know how they all know this guy. I didn't know this guy until I saw the story.
Yeah.
But she sent him a message through the internet telling him what had happened. So he puts these two stories together and he's like, would you mind if I get you two in touch with each other? And they're like, and both of them agreed, So
absolutely. You got to have someone to validate that you're not a psycho.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And two people living in the same home, living the same terror.
Yeah.
I would think that you would find maybe just a little bit of comfort in talking to someone else about it.
If it were me,
too.
I'd be chomping at the bit to chat it up and go, okay, I'm not losing my mind. There was this little creature out there flipping me off and throwing stuff and breaking stuff.
I could just picture that little thing out there eating fish, flipping that guy off.
I know.
Isn't that just terrible? But anyway, these two get together, Charlie and Tammy. It doesn't say anything about the husband or any of Tammy's kids or anything. They get these two women together. They have no idea who each other are, right? They've never met. So they kind of recount their terrifying stories together. And they were talking about, how the similarities between the two of them. And so they decide they're going to go back out to that property. And when they get out there, both of them are kind of creeped out. Both of them kind of said they didn't really want to go, but they needed like closure to it, to the incident. So they go out there and they find that the old barn that they were all freaked out by and that clearly the little gnome lived in had been torn down. So goodbye gnome, I guess.
Yeah.
So now there's no more evidence of it, being there. But so they go up to the door of the farmhouse and they knock on the door, and I'm only going to relate how they said this. I mean, obviously, I don't know who lives there, and
Right.
if they do still live there, and people know the address, I don't want anybody saying anything negative about her, but this is their account. They said that when this female answers the door, she's very rude to them and wants to know why they're there. So they start to tell her about their experience living in the house, that both of them had been prior residents and that they had been terrorized by a gnome. And they said that the lady became extremely agitated, yelling and screaming at them to get off of her property. And they said that her behavior was so outlandish that they started kind of worrying about it, to the point where they thought that maybe she was covering for the gnome.
Why? I could understand if you're living out there quietly and somebody comes up knocking on your property or knocking on your door on your property and you're like, you just kind of want them off your property. I can understand that.
Yeah.
Why would you become agitated if somebody starts asking about gnomes?
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're interviewing a suspect and they get irritated instead of just telling you, I didn't do it. You know, they kind of go off, and that's what this lady did. She went off on them.
Screaming at them to leave. And every time they commented or tried to talk to her about it, she got more and more upset about it.
Yeah, she didn't want to hear it.
And again, this is just my opinion, but to me, that means that she either had interactions with it or is still currently having some sort of interaction with it.
Which is exactly what they thought. They even went as far as to call her the mother gnome. And so, yeah, I don't believe that they've been talked to since this incident has happened. That was the last thing that was written by Jason, was that he got them together. They went out there and they had such a negative experience with this woman that they went their separate ways, and went on with their lives, and apparently put this whole gnome thing behind them, but not without the accusation that this woman is hiding something.
I mean, what's your thought on that? It seems that way, right? Like,
I believe that when people go off the cuff for no reason, I mean, because I know if somebody came here, let's just say somebody came to my house to talk to me about my Bigfoot crossing episode. Mm-hmm. And wanted to question me about Bigfoot, I wouldn't be yelling, "Get off my property, you crazy." And I would talk to them.
Yeah.
And if I was irritated and didn't want them there, I would just politely say, I've already talked about my incident. You heard it, obviously, and I don't really have anything more to say. So,
but that's the thing. You had an incident that they're trying to talk about, just like this. I think this lady who currently lived there at that time also had one. Because if someone came up to you and said, "Hey, Dave, I heard that you had gnomes on your property," you'd probably just say, "I don't have any gnomes on my property."
I'd say, "I wish I had gnomes."
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool. Or
pictures of them, like the pheasant.
Even if they kept asking questions, you wouldn't be upset about it. You would just say, "No, I don't have gnomes."
Right.
You probably, transition the story into, "I do have a Bigfoot, though."
Yeah, exactly.
But so that just, to me, that just shows more that the guy's probably behind the door with a little knife pointed at her back, and he's like, "Get out of here."
Good point. Yeah. He probably was.
Koi fish in one hand and a knife in the other.
Oh, man, I'm telling you what. These women, the horror that they lived, and the fact that they tried to go out and put some closure to it. I guess, they did say that it was comforting to see that the barn had been ripped down. But you got to wonder why. Right? I mean, the woman that was currently living there, somebody ripped that barn down for a reason. The other outbuildings were there. The home is still there.
Unless you're tearing it down to use that as something else or to rebuild.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't especially if you have hundreds of acres. If you had a small half acre and there was a big building on it, and you're like, "I kind of want that gone so I have more backyard space." Okay, I understand that. But 100 acres, you got a barn. Perfectly good barn.
Leave it there.
Leave it there.
Leave it there. Unless it's got a gnome
Unless it's got a gnome in it.
It's skinning your cats. Yeah, well, she's Mother Gnome in my book.
Mother Gnome.
And she's protecting these little humanoids that obviously are coming out of the river or whatever they're doing, magically appearing on that property. They're probably living in the farmhouse now.
Oh, yeah. They're just sleeping in the guest bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that pretty well covers the story of the Porterville gnome. And there's been no incidents since this. So once they ripped that barn down, there's been no more stories. But there is a Indian, I want to say that and I don't know what tribe that it is in the Porterville area there, but and I didn't really research this really hard and heavy, but I do know that Porterville has a they call them water babies, and the Native Americans believed that, and I don't know that this has anything to do with gnomes, but that they believed these little magical, mystical spirit things live in the Tule River, specifically in that river. And they can come out onto land. And I'm just wondering if that has any association with this gnome at all, if it was in their folklore, if it could have been one of these water babies.
Right.
And I mean, you can look that up. You can Google water babies and the Tule River and look into it. I didn't think it was worth kind of getting into as far as this particular story, because I don't know that those are gnomes, but it is some spiritual thing that supposedly lives in the water, comes up on the land and does stuff. And they can be irritated by people, by the presence of people, or they can be helpful. Kind of like the gnome,
Yeah.
And so, and when you study this stuff, I mean, us living here in Montana,
Oh, yeah.
we have the little people of the Pryors, right? And so the Crow Nation, that's part of their folklore. I believe they call them the Narumbi or the Awakuli. And they're these little people that live in the Pryor Mountains. And we could do an episode on them, because I've read some horrifying things about hunting parties that have come across these people. Horrible things have happened to them unless you take care of them. So if you have permission to hunt the land through the Crow Nation and you're out there and you come across these little people, I think they expect, or at least what I've read, they kind of expect a sacrifice, like your first deer or elk that you take. You throw it over a particular cliff, and then they take it and they eat it, and then they will wish you well and help you. But if you don't, one of the stories I read was that a camping party or a hunting party woke up, got out of their tents, and all their horses had been eviscerated. And they didn't hear anything. The horses didn't whinny or cry or scream at night. They got up and all their horses had been savagely gutted.
Well, it's kind of similar to in Alaska, they have the little people. There's a village northwest of, and I'm going to butcher the name, I apologize, Shaktoolik. And they were terrified of the little people over there.
Yeah.
They thought that anyone who caught sight of them would end up missing. And there's a lot of missing person cases out in Alaska too.
Yeah.
Don't know if it coincides with that, but
frightening, because it was just getting eye contact with them.
Yeah.
If you looked at one of those little people, you were gone.
you didn't have to be hunting or doing anything.
No.
So,
yeah, and they thought that some of the people that were missing had actually been taken underground, right?
Yeah, and they would they thought that they were either enslaving them and they'd make them work for them, or they were just eating them out there.
And supposedly there were some survivors that they released like a year down the road.
Oh, see, I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, and they were enslaved. And so they were made to work underground for these little people.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, it's slave labor. But the little people. How can you even imagine?
Just for making
like
eye contact with them.
Yeah.
But I think not just Native Americans, pretty much every culture has some sort of gnomes, and whether you call it a gnome or a fairy or a leprechaun.
Right. And, you know, a lot of that stuff originated like in the European areas and stuff. And of course, Ireland with their leprechauns and whatnot. And there's been a million horror stories made about little people. There's been a million videos. If you go on YouTube, you can type in little people, and there's some videos of like, I've seen one where they're out in the forest and they caught a little nymph or a gnome or a fairy or something firing across and hiding behind trees. And the most recent one I saw, it could just be a child, but you can't tell if it's like on a ring cam or some kind of a parking lot camera.
Yeah.
Where there's this tiny little creature waddling across the, I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen that one.
I saw it just recently. It was released, and it's waddling across a parking lot. But it literally could be like a 2-year-old child. That's why it would be out there at night by itself.
Yeah.
You know, is a whole other story. But so there's all kinds of documentation on little people.
Yeah.
And whether they're evil or benevolent, happy little creatures, there's a lot of information out there on them.
You know, even if I came across one of the nice ones, it would still be pretty horrifying, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just like a little group of little people running around.
Yeah, especially if they had spears and sharp teeth and stuff. You know,
because I'd probably be dumb enough to pop a shot at a nice one and then turn it into a bad one.
Well, and you know what? I just recently watched. It's on Netflix. I can't say that I would recommend that anybody watch it, but if you want a good laugh, it's extremely gory. But it's called "There's Something in the Barn," and well, you know, I've been doing a lot of research on these little guys, and specifically the Porterville gnome. And so I'm flipping through Netflix one night. It's late at night, and I thought, well, I'll just watch a movie before I go to bed. I see There's Something in the Barn. It's a horror movie. I love horror movies. And it was about barn elves. Well, they look exactly like gnomes. And the whole premise of this story is this: they move into this place. I think they're in Norway, right? So it's an American family. They move to Norway. They pick up roots, and they're going to go start their new life in a new country. And he had, I think, inherited this beautiful farm home with a little barn.
Yeah,
right? So it's
little barn.
It's the Porterville
just
story.
Don't have a small barn.
Yeah. And so the little boy sees lights on in the barn all the time and hears noises, and he goes out and investigates, and boom, there's this elf, right? And so he starts feeding it. Well, the elf loves him, and the elf loves the family. But the little boy learns there's rules to the elves. And one is 3 simple rules, right? Don't change their environment. Leave them alone. No bright lights or no loud noises. And if you treat them kind, they'll treat you the same. So he feeds this little guy and stuff. Well, his parents don't know that the gnome's out there because they don't believe their son. He tries to tell them. And they want to turn the barn into like a party central. So they string up all these lights. They have a big feast out there, and they invite the entire neighborhood. Well, this little elf loses his mind. And now he's on a killing spree, and it just goes gory from there. And he calls in all of his little elf friends from other barns, and they're coming in droves, and they're murdering everybody. And while that sounds horrifying, it is a horror comedy. And so it's funny at the same time. And I'm not going to ruin the ending in case anybody wants to watch it. But when I'm watching that, all I could think of was, this is literally the Porterville gnome story.
Yeah. Change the environment. New people coming in, and not saying those rules or what that gnome was abiding by, but
well, I'm going to tell you what, if I ever have a gnome on my property, I'm not changing his environment. No. I'm not putting up lights, and I'm not making loud noises.
Yeah, I'll feed him little, snacks and call it good.
Yeah, feed him a cat now and then.
Yeah, there you go.
Call it a day. Well, anyway, I think that's it for today. I think our next episode, we're going to be talking about kind of a historical cryptid. There hasn't been, he dates way back, and there hasn't been any really recent sightings, but I think we're gonna go over it and at least the story behind it, because it is an interesting story. And
It's a good one.
And that is the Jersey Devil.
I like it.
So that's what we're going to be talking about in the following weeks, and we hope that you stay tuned and enjoy. Hope that you enjoyed the Porterville Gnome. And if you got any tiny terrors living in a barn by your house, remember those 3 simple rules.
Yep.
You got anything else, Jake, before we go?
That's good. I can't wait to get into Jersey Devil. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Everybody take care.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the show and you want to help us out, then go ahead and give us a follow, leave us a review, and don't forget to turn on the automatic download button so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And as always, if you've had any experiences, stories, thoughts, comments, or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to cryptidfanatic@gmail.com. Let us know if you'd like to be on the show or just have your story featured during one of our episodes.